We have yet another episode being done today for the past podcast. If you're tuning in, I do appreciate it. If you'd like to check out any previous episodes, go to Spreaker.com/Brite Podcast. Nonetheless, let's continue the show. Alright, y'all, so the podcast is rolling. We're ready to do our thing, make this thing work, let it be what it is. But I wanted to do a bit of a backstory as to what kind of got my podcast mind flowing a little bit. So I may do a little bit of shameless plug and promotions of other podcasters. And before I continue, I do want to be clear, because I have stated it in the intro, but I do want to be concise in doing this each episode. Shout outs to the Blue Microphone, the Yeti, still loving it. Let's keep talking about it until. And for my podcast storage, I do keep them stored on Spreaker.com. Everyone has different sites that they use. I've just found Spreaker to kind of work to my liking and appeal. So just wanted to get that in there before we continue. So we'll jump into it. If you go back, let's see, we're in March. I want to say it might have been March or April of 2015. I kind of, I'll get a story in a unique light to kind of present it to some people who do already know. I was introduced to Spreaker in general because of a program I was listening to called Loop That Bish, which is Loop That Bish, one word. And they were doing episodes, and currently still doing episodes on Spreaker. So I just kind of would, listen to their shows, listen to their mixes and music, and that was kind of like my music outlet and my sanity haven in so many words. Valued it, enjoyed it, don't regret it, etc., etc. So you have that going on. It worked. It just kind of fit. And then I decided, let me try and do a podcast. So I was slow, but willing to try to get into podcasting. And so what I did was I purchased a Samsung Media, and I may have shared this story before, but this is kind of just an intimate breakdown of what got me into doing podcasting and kind of how it's gotten me to the point that I'm at now. So I did, I had the Samsung Media, and I had my Media for a little over a year and a half, now close to 2 years. And I was, I started off, I did my first podcast. I always tell this story because this is always a story that I reminisce on, but it's literally how it went. I did my podcast. First podcast I did had the fan going in the background. My window was open, not open as in you could hear outside noise, but the microphone was very clear where it could hear everything. Like I was literally able to hear the bus driving by, just a lot of things. So I didn't think anything of it at the time, and I'm doing my podcast. I go through the show, record it, upload it, listen to it, and realize that the whole time I was recording from the microphone that's built into my laptop. So that kind of threw me off, and it didn't have me discouraged, but it had me like, okay, if I'm going to learn this, I really need to get the craft down. So one thing I did start doing, which really helped a lot, and it helps me a lot to this day, is I listen to other podcasters, because you want to know what you're doing right, but also see what you could work on doing better. One thing that I've really grown to love now is, normally I would talk like this into the microphone, but now after listening to enough podcasts, as well as listening to podcasts and watching streamers on Twitch, I realized that I can sit a natural distance away from the microphone and it'll pick up my voice as long as I'm talking crisp and clear and concise and direct, or whatever you want to call it. So I was able to kind of get that theory down. I also grasped and understood the theory of getting a stand. I did get a stand for my microphone. In hindsight, because of me doing that, the legs for the Samson Meteor I had were pretty much lost. So, that was just kind of a lesson learned, and it was what it was. But I got into a bit of a comfortable flow with the podcast process and just recording and getting everything set up, doing preps. I did have to learn how to prep properly, and I'm still learning that as I go. I mean, I've been at it now a little over a year, where I've kind of perfected the craft. But I've now got it where I make sure, like with the podcast that I'm doing for April, I don't really have to prepare too much because a lot of it's going to be improv. If you go back out, I'll find links to share with everyone. My initial podcast that I was doing, I had little to no notes. I may have done kind of an outline format and saying, okay, here's what I'm going to talk about. Here's what we're going to get into, and let's just do it. Now it's, for instance, with sports is very informative. So sports, I make sure that I'm not just throwing storylines out there without, having a little bit of a clue. And if I don't, the internet is always there to fact check you. So that helps too. I learned from a lot of things, and I continue to learn. And like I said, now my newest thing is I listen to a lot of podcasts. So one of the podcasts that I was listening to frequently, I haven't listened to it in a while, is Shaquille. I listened to Shaq's podcast. I was a big fan of Joe Budden's podcast. Then I realized that since I'm into things such as gaming, I listen to a few gaming podcasts. So I did that. I had Bay, and then Bay was replaced, not with the Yeti, but with a listener, because I caught an episode of Aisha Tyler, and she did it was kind of like a year review podcast, and it gave me an idea that I possibly may try this year. We'll see how that goes. Well, I'm just going to say, look, there's going to be 3 hours, I'm going to talk, and y'all just going to have to let it be what it is. But I've seen where I love my blog and I love to sit and write, but if I truly had an honest choice, the podcast option is kind of becoming more second nature to me, and I can just sit and kind of just get my thoughts out verbally, because it's just me, a microphone, and a bottle of water, maybe a fan. And as I do on Saturdays, my co-host right now, we've been working through episodes. I'm still getting that solidified and kind of getting the routine down, and that's gonna come with time. Not just with him, but just with myself. Trying to, we've gotten on sync. I think last Saturday gave a good template, especially with having the opportunity to record the way I wanted to. So that helped out and went a long way. But I listened to Aisha Tyler's podcast, and that was kind of like, okay, this is definitely gonna be something I need to devote and put time into. Of course, went to MagFest podcast. The original microphone that Samson broke within a week or two. Just life and luck kind of went the way it did. Was able to get the Blue Yeti. Got the mic on that. I think I ordered it either that Thursday or that Friday. No, I'm sorry. I ordered it Thursday. It arrived Friday. I happened to be off on Friday. Sorry, I'm slow thinking, but I'm really remembering this. I think I was off that day. So I received the microphone. Used it, checked it out, seen how it was, and then on Saturday, the case for the microphone came that I wanted, and it just was kind of like it all just worked out and came together at one good time. Now I've networked a lot stronger with the podcast, so it's causing me to take more time in listening not only to other people's podcasts, but getting more input from those who do podcasts. So Mike Murphy, I've listened to his podcast. The Audacity to Podcast has given me a lot of tips and a lot of tricks. Now granted, agree to disagree, I've turned into the Adobe Audition baby, and a couple of months ago it was GarageBand. You couldn't tell me anything other than GarageBand. I thought GarageBand was the best thing smoking, but as I've learned, you venture into new things, you try new stuff out, and Adobe Audition, I've had it, just didn't realize what I was capable of doing with it until I really just sat down and invested the time in it. So that's where I'm at now. And I listened to Ashley Taylor, oddly enough, I listened to Ashley Taylor, who I've networked with through podcasting. Her social medias are A Taylor Y, pretty much on everything. Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter. I'm tempted to say YouTube, but don't hold me to that. But I've been locked into her shows, and she does a daily podcast. What I'm tempted to believe, and I need to go back, I'm doing research on this now as I kind of cap things off with this episode, is she either may have done podcasts every day in April, or she just started up in April and has been working on her podcast for a year every day. She's been doing the past year. Every day she has an episode up. And I wanted to go back and find the first episode, because if the first episode was on April Fool's Day, that would be interesting for me, solely because it gives me the idea that I could possibly look into doing this as a daily routine. But I've not really given that much thought yet, only because I solely want to get down the craft of just doing good episodes once a week. Because, like I said, to give the backstory, I was doing sometimes 3 episodes, 4 episodes a week, and it was just chaotic and disorganized. So that's that story, or that's how that all went regarding the podcast. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you that's mainly the history and the foundation of where my podcast started, where it is now, where I look for it to go. Fair warning. Other than my Saturday sports podcast, these are going to be the And Stuff podcast that I'm referring to. And I'll be looking to, because of doing this, it'll push me to implement more And Stuff topics into my weekend podcast. So, as always, thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, this is Past Podcast signing out. Peace. We've done it once again. We finished yet another episode. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. If you're not following on Twitter or on Facebook, please look up Past Podcast. That's PASS Podcast, one word. I am accepting inquiries for any topics or concerns at pastpodcastbt@gmail.com. And just continue to support. I appreciate all the support and everyone listening and tuning in. Until next time, y'all take it easy.